Hi Alexis, I wanted to give you some feedback on your rough draft here. So I will go ahead and just jump right in and then I'll try to show you a couple of things that I think might be helpful in the D2L shell. And then I'll also send you this version with my comments so that you have a record of these and you're not just trying to see them in the video. Okay, let me zoom in here so that we can see this a little bit better. Okay, so right now, just a couple of nitpicky technical things. You do need to format the essay according to MLA style in the Word document version that you turn in. So I get the sense that maybe you're trying to make this look like a blog. You actually need to create a blog on a blogging platform like Blogger. Blogger's the one I suggest just because it's free and very user-friendly. If you have a blog already somewhere else, you can certainly use that, but I think almost everyone in the class used Blogger. So you'll actually have to create a blog. That was one of the discussions that you missed, and I'll show you that in just a second. And then post your essay onto your blog, and that will be part of what I'll grade, because if you look at the rubric on the assignment sheet, you do actually get graded for your ability to create the blog and execute the blogging conventions. And the conventions that you'll have to apply to your blog are the use of a header, a background, tags or labels, which are words that you input when you create your post so that people can find your post through a keyword search. I'll show you those in just a minute. And embedded links. So I'll try to come back to all of that at the end, but just know for the Word document version itself, it can be formatted according to MLA style the same way that the sample is done. So where the sample is in Unit 2 with the assignment sheet, you can just look at that. You'd want to get rid of this box, use the header just for the page number at the top right of the page, put your last name in there, and then at the very beginning of the main part of the essay, that's where you'd have like your name, my last name, the course number, and the date, then your title centered above the first paragraph, and then the first paragraph starting after that, and make sure the whole thing is Times New Roman 12-point font. So as far as the Word document version goes, it should just look like any essay you would turn in, not necessarily like a blog, because you will create your actual blog in a real blogging platform like Blogger. Okay, so that was my first comment. Secondly, this is really good background information, but I think it's probably a little bit too much. You don't need to say all of this. You know, the quote from President Obama here is relevant, but I'm not sure it's necessary. You do have another supplementary source later that's tied into your discussion, which is more what I'm looking for. It's okay to provide something like this in background, but I really just don't think you need it. And because there is more for you to talk about in terms of the analysis, I think you could condense some of this introductory background information just a little bit. But even more important than that is that when you say things like the leaking continued to 2012, it was 210 million gallons, it is considered the largest environmental disaster, things like that need to be cited, because I'm assuming you didn't just make that stuff up, you read it somewhere, so you need to have attributive tags in there, and then also link to those sources, because linking is the way to cite sources in text when you're working in a multimodal genre like a blog. And so in your actual blog that you create on Blogger, you'll want to embed those links. But even here in Microsoft Word, you can go highlight the passage, highlight the actual information, and then go to Insert, hyperlink, and where it says address here, you can just type in the URL where you found it, and that will create an embedded link, and it won't change any of the text here. It'll just show up in blue, which you probably are familiar with. Is kind of the conventional way of noting a link in text. So as far as your introduction goes, you know, I think it could be condensed. You definitely need to have sources and links here. And then especially when you say they've created a campaign advertisement, I need you to link to the actual ad so that I can go watch it and make sure that you're analyzing it correctly. And also, I'm assuming there's probably some title for the video, so it would be helpful to your reader if you could introduce it by title, cleaning up the goal for, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what all the titles of their videos are, but it should be right there on the YouTube screen when you go to watch the video. So I would introduce it there and put the article, or excuse me, the video title in quotes when you introduce it. this little short paragraph right here, I'm assuming is meant to be your thesis statement. Remember that the word ad is an advertisement is spelled AD, not like addition, which is ADD as you have it here. You actually don't need a thesis at the beginning of your essay. This is more of an open form genre, so we're not following all those rigid closed form rules of a top-down thesis-based structure. If you look again at the assignment sheet in terms of organization, it really just asks you to present a claim in the form of a thesis at the end of your essay. That's what we call a delayed thesis strategy. So it's certainly not wrong for you to preview some points here in a thesis at the beginning, and you do a great job saying that it's effective. That's really important. But I'm not really looking for this until the end of the essay because it's not your traditional super academic essay. It's more of an open form journalistic genre in that it's a blog. So I think you can decide if you want to keep this here or not, but if you're going to have this thesis at the beginning, it needs to incorporate all your points, not just one or two, because you make a point about ethical appeals here later in the discussion that doesn't get previewed here. So you do mention the emotional point that you're about to make. You mention another point here, but again, these points need to be in order. You know, you're talking about emotions here. You're talking about emotions a little bit more in this paragraph, but this idea of displaying monetary contributions doesn't really come up until the end of this second to last paragraph. So these things feel kind of a little bit out of order here, in addition to not even including that last point about ethics. So if you're going to have a thesis here at the beginning, make sure it includes all your points and that they're directly in order of how they're going to appear in the body paragraphs in the remainder of your essay. Then again, I think that this first point is a little bit vague. Right now, the way you have it worded is mostly like summary. You're basically just saying it shows these things, which is just summarizing what's in the video. Whereas for true analysis, I would say connect this to a stronger rhetorical point. I think you may be getting at something about logos here. That could be wrong. I might just be thinking that because you say it's effective in the first part of the sentence. But if this is a point about logos, I would say reword this so that it doesn't sound so much like you're just summarizing, but instead that you can focus more on the fact that they're making a logical appeal here. So I would rework this if this were to be your thesis, something like, you know, the ad is effective in logically getting their argument across. However, it appears to be lacking an emotional connection and let's see, lacks some ethical strength as it's been disproven by other articles or something like that. So that you're really talking about logic, emotion, and ethics and previewing those points in order. And then again, this, if this is going to be part of your logic point, would need to be moved up here because that would be the first thing that appears in your thesis. And then again, I still feel like most of what you have in especially this paragraph and this paragraph here is really just a lot of summary. So you do say it's lacking in emotion. You do say a couple of things that allude to a rhetorical appeal, but again, kind of similar to what I showed you up here in the thesis, a lot of the way this is worded is just summary. So if you're saying, you know, they show these things, they displayed these things, this focus is semi-borderline analytical, but again, you still need to connect it to a rhetorical point like logic or logos in order to make this true analysis. I'm not sure which rhetorical point you're trying to use this example to support. This sounds like it could be almost an ethics point or even an emotion point. Same, oh, this is definitely about emotion here, but it's ineffective in displaying any emotional connections. This is much stronger analysis in the second half of the paragraph here, but again, I think each of your paragraphs need to be focused on one distinct rhetorical point. So maybe this is your logos paragraph, and this is your pathos paragraph, and this is your ethos paragraph. And then once you have those split up into separate paragraphs rather than including them together like you have before, that's when you would go back and add stronger topic sentences to the paragraphs so that you could preview at the beginning of the paragraph the rhetorical point that you're going to be making there, and that will focus that paragraph on analysis rather than summary. Because again, like down here, the ad runs a slideshow. The slides show coastal photos. The fisherman appears to be problem solving. There's a recreational boat supporting the efforts to repair the community. This shows healthy coastal wildlife. Each of these photos are outlined in green and yellow. This is all summary. And so I think in your head, maybe you can see how these are contributing to the rhetoric of the ad, but you're not saying that here. And so you'd really need to come right out and say, the ad uses strong images to appeal to the emotions of the audience. And then even further, as you're describing it with these examples, show what that emotional effect actually is. Or if this isn't your emotional paragraph or your emotion paragraph, maybe it's your logic paragraph, explain to me why you think these things make it more logical or more successful in achieving its purpose of being a logical argument. And then this was a much stronger topic sentence. Here, this is what I'd like to see in each of the previous paragraphs, depending on which of the rhetorical appeals they focus on, logos versus pathos, that kind of thing. So this was a lot stronger, but then don't forget to put this in your thesis at the beginning if you're going to have a thesis. And then later, even in that very same sentence, you kind of lose focus on ethos and switch back to emotion. I feel, or I'm sensing that you may be most comfortable, you might feel the most comfortable talking about the emotions in the ad, and that's great. I think that's pretty common for most people in the class, but I also want to see that you can push it further and talk about some of the logic and talk about some of the ethical appeals that are conveyed. So don't start out talking about ethics and then switch immediately to emotion, because they really are separate things. They're separate types of appeals. You may have an example from the ad that illustrates multiple things. You might have, something about the use of color, tying into the green and yellow of the BP logo. That could have an emotional effect and an ethical effect, but you need to structure your paragraphs around the appeals, emotions, ethics, etc., and then just bring in that example each time, as opposed to just giving us the example and assuming that we can interpret how that connects to the rhetorical effects of the ad. So that's kind of like what I'm saying here. Don't forget to check your spelling on ad. And then down here, this is another place where you need to provide a link and actually introduce the source you're referring to. I'm assuming this is your CNN source from the works cited, but you need to introduce it here. It's kind of similar to how you would have in the summary. According to the article, blah, 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 by so-and-so, published on CNN.com on this date, BP is attempting to get out of paying the maximum fine. And then another thing you need to do for all your paragraphs, but especially so here, explain to me further how this contributes to lacking ethics in the ad, and tie back to that at the end of the paragraph to wrap up. And you can do that for all your body paragraphs. So if this is your logic paragraph, connect everything back to logic. If this is your emotion paragraph, connect everything back to the emotional effects, and that sort of thing. Your works cited needs to be in MLA style. It's not enough just to put the links here. The embedded links need to go in text. You wouldn't have any URLs in a traditional works cited page. And don't forget to center the words works cited and move it to the top of the next page. So you can follow the sample if you're looking for how to cite according to MLA, or you can go to the Purdue OWL, which is a good resource online for where to find instructions as to how to cite things. And then I would do MLA because that's the style we're using, and then web sources. And this is for your works cited. So I would put that in as well, and it will pop right up with the instructions for how to cite your electronic sources, whether you're citing an entire website or citing a page on a website, etc. And then let me just show you in the discussion for, I believe it was week 7, the open discussion, it was week 4. That's where it shows you how to set up your blog on Blogger. So follow this link and then do all of the instructions there. You'll have to create a Google account. This is automatically logging me into my blog. But let me just create a new post here to show you. Those tags that I mentioned when I was showing you the rubric, those are the words that you type in when you post so that people can search online for your blog. So you would just take your Word document, essay, copy the whole thing, then paste it into the new post. Come over here and type the keywords that you think someone would search to find it. You know, maybe it's BP, oil spill, things like that. Separate them by a comma. Embed your links by using this link key here, and then hit publish. And then submit the link to your blog once you have it set up when you turn in the essay as well. So let me know if you have any more questions. Thank